Hi friends, my name is Borrodante and welcome back to the drawing to painting tutorial. There's no short way to call it, is it? Now let's start with acknowledging that my haircut is amazing and move on with this. So as you can see, I did a couple of changes. This is mostly where we stopped in the previous episode of this tutorial. We used our sketch to create a silhouette, then we filled all the parts of our character and their clothing with main colors of everything. So what I changed is, I used the air perspective color, but I made it a lot darker for the background because obviously our character is indoors. This was the main idea to begin with. It's still in the same gamma, I just chose a darker color. If we take this color and move it vertically lower, we'll get the color of the background spot, only a bit lighter. So there's that, and also for the character I decided to choose as well a much darker of an air perspective color. Because when I tried to use a very bright color, it looked really weird. Like, you shouldn't do that. I mean, when the character is right in front of us, it's not a very good idea to use a very strong air perspective effect. So yeah, we chose a really close to black color. So we're here, and this is gonna be the darkest color of anything on our character. So there's that. Then I changed some colors on the character as well. I changed the tint of the red color because it wasn't exactly correct to make it too much of a yellow. Because we really got ourselves a somewhat of an orange t-shirt. And that's because we were blending red color with air perspective, which is green. And green is almost an opposite color of red. Almost a complete opposite. That means when we blend these two colors, they will meet in the perfect gray. Or, because it's almost the opposite colors, they will be really close to gray. That means if we'll take red color and blend it a little bit with green air perspective, we'll just get it basically a little bit less saturated. That's it. Don't move it closer to yellow. That's the thing about blending colors. Basically what that means, what you have to do to make it work, you just grab the air perspective color of the same value as our red color and blend it a little bit with that red. Like, you choose a very transparent spot of our stroke, and this would be the color of our red t-shirt if it would be blended even more, if the air perspective would be even stronger. So that's how you do it. Initially we would grab this color, make it saturated and like really red. Say this is our actual t-shirt if there's no air perspective on it, if it's completely close to us. Then we blend it with our air perspective that is conveniently at the same value. Lucky. And we blend it a little bit, and you can see we already get the exact color as the actual t-shirt right now. I actually didn't do that. I'm just so talented, I actually got the right tint. So we'll actually get the same color here. A very tiny, you can see like in there in hue, pay attention as I'm going from pure red to slightly blended. It moves a little bit closer to yellow, just a little bit, because again, green is not a complete opposite of red. So we blend the two colors and you can see it mostly just gets a lot paler, a lot less saturated, a lot less juicy. And a super tiny, super subtle movement towards the yellow or towards green. So that's how colors blend in air perspective sense. So we got ourselves the t-shirt color. Now it actually looks like red t-shirt in somewhat of a greenish fog. And this is the way you should distort all the colors in the scene. Always blend them towards some kind of a theme, towards the main gamma of the whole thing. This is important because you can't choose just all the colors. It won't really make sense. There's no such thing as a pure lighting anywhere. So think where your character is. Is it a cold scene in the winter or in some tomb? Or maybe it's a warm sunny theme. So it's always going to have this mood. Start with a mood. So we have all these basic colors right now, following the green zombie mood. So this is a great beginning. Also, another thing that I actually changed in between the episodes, you can see how sketch right now is super slim. It has super tiny lines. That's because what I did I took the initial sketch, I control-clicked on the layer, and we got ourselves this selection. Right now I pressed Q to turn on the quick mask mode. And right now in quick mask mode, we can change the selection as if it's just a black and white picture. So what we do, we summon the curves, Control M, and we bend it downwards like this to eat away as much of semi-transparent parts of the sketch into complete transparency, therefore making it a lot slimmer, a lot more transparent on the edges. So that's what I did. I basically like dissolved it in transparency like that. Then we press Q again, create a new layer, grab the gradient tool, choose black color, and fill this our selection inside of a new layer, and we get super tiny thing. As you can see, I overdid it a bit. You shouldn't bend the curves all that much. A little bit less would work great. So I have this. Also, I chose a bit of a lower opacity. So the point of this is we get even slimmer lines, so we get to work with our sketch and never have to actually turn it off, because it's not an obstacle for us at all. Of course, soon enough we'll turn it off because we just won't need it, but there's that. So we have our zombie with all the colors filled in. Now let's start to actually shade the thing with a t-shirt. Now the basic idea is the following. This is a rule of thumb how to work on things. If we just have one light source, and right now we do actually think of only one light source, the flashlight light source from the camera. So whenever we have just one light source, when we remove it and the object becomes darker, if there's no actually like special effects of the material, like translucency of the skin or something, then when we darken it, we just actually make it closer to black vertically. So we just go darker like this. You don't have to imagine anything else. Don't make it more saturated or less saturated. There's no need to do that. Objects just get darker, like it gets a lower exposure. That's all that happens to begin with. So right now, when we're starting to actually shade the first object, we grab its color that we defined. We'll lower it, well, let's say like this. Not too little, not too much, just a noticeable yet not too crazy of a change. First thing first, you think about the main overall shape of the object. This t-shirt is covering the body, so it has kind of, in general, somewhat round shapes everywhere. So that's what we do. That means basically everywhere on its edges is gonna be facing away. Now, with this first soft color, we shouldn't leave a single place where there's too much of a flat, completely bright color of the shirt. Like the initial color, this one. It shouldn't stay completely flat anywhere, because it actually shouldn't happen. It's gonna be completely bright only where it's facing the light source completely. As it turns away just a little bit, it's gonna get darker already. Just fill it in. All of it like this. Not hard, right? We're choosing pretty big, soft brush and just define the overall soft roundness of the object. We're defining the basic shape. Going back and forth, this is a really low contrast, but right now we really shouldn't leave a single place completely flat bright. This is our main goal. Now let's choose a darker color. So we have basically this. Right now let's go a bit even darker and go with a bit more of details. So right now the only math that's going on in my head is the calculation of where the surface is facing. So as this cylinder of the sleeve is facing away from us, in here it kind of goes away really a lot. It's basically whenever it's close to the horizon, the outline of the object, outline is completely 90 degrees away from us. That's always like that if it's a round shape. We kind of have to go right next to completely black on the edges, and on some really extreme wrinkles where they also define a silhouette. Like when the wrinkle is strong enough, it also creates a silhouette, and you can see there's a lot of black color right now here, because it's actually completely facing away at certain point. We kind of have a really close to the scene lighting in the face camera of mine. And also you can see all the edges of my shirt are also getting darker. because they're facing away from the light source that's really close to the camera. It's not as extreme as we're going here, because we just have one flashlight right next to the camera, and in my case it's two light sources here and here, and they're kinda softened a bit, so we should think even more extreme. So do that, define some wrinkles, but really don't go all that crazy. Right now the main importance for us is to define where the shirt should be like really dark and where it should be almost completely bright. So the material of t-shirt is like a basic cotton. It has a really high roughness, meaning contrary to metal, it's darkening very little. I explained it in one episode of SCP, but we have to explain it here again, because this is the place to explain it. Anyway, let's say this is our object, and right here, like from this angle, there's a light source. Let's say it's forever away, so there's no actual angle like this. It's like going parallel. So the light source will be hitting our object from this angle everywhere, and this is gonna be the terminator. A line where light turns into complete dark, where we won't see any light source at all. From this side, there will be no influence from this light source on the object. So, theoretically speaking, it's gonna be completely black. And on this side, the more our object is facing the light source, like this is gonna be the spot where it's completely bright as the light source allows us to be bright. Meaning this color. This is the color that the t-shirt has at this point. At any point away from this middle spot, it's gonna get darker and darker. The values. So, we get darker as we face away. Now, at a certain point, we'll start to just blending it in with the black color. In our case, it's not black, but the air perspective color. This is exactly how air perspective is distorting colors in the darkness. It's replacing the black with its own color. So this is what's gonna happen. Now, about the roughness. In case of the t-shirt, the cotton, the roughness is really strong, and that means that the surface, on micro level, the surface is really complex. There's a lot of micro bumps on the surface of the object. A lot of random molecules sticking out everywhere. The cotton has kind of a rough feel to it. That is actually important for the way it's being lit. When you touch a dry stone, it's also very rough on the touch. But when you touch, say, metal or glass, or whatever your toilet is made of, those materials are really smooth. That means they have really low roughness. And in that case, all this mass is gonna become really smooth. So if we zoom in on this tiny spot here, in case of cotton, we have this kind of thing. And because of this, even though the angle is kind of big already, like we're facing away from the light source a lot, we'll still get a lot of micro places where the surface is still facing the light source completely, and that's increasing the brightness of the surface in general, right until the spot where it goes completely away, right to the terminator. That's why when the roughness of the material is high, this terminator will be really obvious. In here, we'll see a kind of a sharp edge. It's still gonna have like a gradient of darkening, but it's not gonna be very strong. This is how you create the feel that the material is kind of rough, dry, or whatever. Now, if this shirt would be made of metal, it wouldn't have this kind of complex surface. It would be really smooth, maybe super tiny bumps like a little bit, but that doesn't matter much. So basically, overall metal, it will be darkening really fast, and it will actually create this effect when the material makes the whole object look kind of heavy. Because this is the way things usually go. Whenever the roughness is low, that means that material is kind of high density. I don't know why that's connected, but that's how things usually go. So if you create a smaller roughness effect, the object will get dark a lot faster, and the line of the terminator will smooth out a lot. We won't really see a perfect line, because the material is already getting very softly darker and transitions really softly into the completely black side. So this is an important thing. Whenever you're painting metal, you do this kind of gradient. Whenever you're painting something more rough, with a more complex microsurface, you just have to think of what kind of surface is like paper. It's really rough in a micro sense. Plastic mostly is a lot smoother, but sometimes it's also rough depending on how it was processed. Skin is somewhere in the middle. It's kind of rough, but it's also kind of moist. And usually whenever object is moist, it gets a lot less rough. Like water smoothes out all micro bumps on the surface and it becomes a lot less rough. That's actually a thing. Think about getting a dry stone and watering it a little bit. It will become darker right away. That's because the roughness gets a lot smaller. So, the more you know. Kind of important, but I mean, if you're on the beginning level, don't really bother too much to actually think this through. Right now, you really should think about just defining the geometry properly. But whenever you'll think about, why does my object looks kind of plasticky and really doesn't feel like the cloth isn't really cloth, the skin looks like plastic, there's a good chance that you defined the wrong kind of roughness for the object. So this gradient is really important, like on the next stage of thinking through the lighting. So there's that. I know it's kind of a complex thing, and you really didn't think that your world will be so complex all of a sudden. But yeah, that's the thing to keep in mind sometimes. So right now I'm thinking, right here there will be kind of a sharp change from one brightness to another, because this part of the chest is still facing us, but right next to it there's this sleeve that's facing away. And also the whole sleeve is kind of facing us like this. That means it's gonna be facing away the light source that's somewhere in the middle. And that means the whole sleeve will be a bit darker here, like that. So this is how I'm defining the overall main shapes of everything. You see, it kind of even feels right that it's sort of facing upwards, like away from our light source. To really think through like how actually all the lighting works properly, how the shadows distribute on the surface of any material, of the room, of a street, or nature, or just a character, the clothing, the wrinkles, all of that you really should learn from studies. Paint something while looking at a photo. Like paint something from photo. Don't paint over a photo, just look at it and paint your own version. It doesn't have to be perfect, but really think through how much shadows appear at certain circumstances. When objects are really close to one another, how they will get darker and everything like that. That's the thing that you really should learn from studies. That's where studies come in. But you really have to know what's the logic of it. Everything is about angles and distances between objects and between objects and light sources. So right now I'll choose a brighter color and we'll look up, we have some wrinkles going on the sleeve, like here. And at a certain point, any wrinkle of a cloth has kind of round shape. That means at a certain point, it will be facing us again. Even though the whole sleeve is facing away, the bump of it will be facing us at a certain point. That means completely bright spot at a certain point. So I'm just defining that bright spot somewhere. Here, here, like this. A little bit bright, a little bit dark right next to it, because wrinkles not only face us but also face away even more. A little bit of that gonna happen here. Every single deviation on the surface, any kind of bump, even on the places where the t-shirt is overall facing us, the tiny wrinkles will still affect the brightness of the surface, but just a little bit. It's really important not to overdo it. Too strong of a contrast will look wrong, because again, the roughness of our cotton is really high, so it's not gonna get all that dark from tiny wrinkles. So I'm adding certain lines. I'm almost like creating just sketch strokes, but kind of softer and really transparent. It's not exactly a perfect geometry of wrinkles for the cloth. For that I should really study more from photos to make sure I know how to do this. I mean, I know better than this, I just don't want to really think through it. Right now, it doesn't really matter all that much. So yeah, a little bit of here and there. Wow, this looks really good actually, like really well-defined geometry, like everything is defined. Not a single spot on the surface is kind of undefined, floating somewhere in weird flat brightness. Now, the next step is actually we grab the darkest color that we defined so far, and we go even darker. But at certain point, as we get dark, we should really think when we might hit the darkest color of our object, meaning this color of the air perspective. And as you can see, it has this kind of brightness. And our darkest red right now is here. So the next step we go, we basically should already blend with the air perspective color. This is again a bit of a next step of thinking about it. You can really go to just, like, don't really think about air perspective, just go darker vertically and that's it. But if you really want to have the air perspective effect, right now what I'll do is I'll blend in this dark air perspective color. And I grab somewhere in the middle right here. And this is our next step of darkening our shirt. It's gonna be really on the very edges, and at certain places we won't even get to that color. It's really, again, this is something you should learn from studies. In most circumstances, the darkest color, when the light source is right from the point of view, it's really a special case, and the objects will mostly not get to a really dark color. But on really round things, it still might work out properly. A lot of the time you can see, like in here, I feel like this is a really strong color for the wrinkles. In the middle, they should be really subtle. So I just grabbed the brightest color right now and slightly, semi-transparently remove their contrast away, so they would be a lot more subtle. So there you go, you just define the overall soft transitions from bright to dark, and then on top of it, you grab the colors and go a bit darker, a bit brighter, here and there to define micro changes of the surface. It's a really important part, like take your time with that. This is basically the rendering, like this is where it's really important. Just defining these lights and darks of everything. So yeah, for now this is it. We defined the t-shirt with one light source. We'll continue from this point in the next episode, and you try to live with this for now. And I thank you for watching if you did. I guess you did if you're here. Leave a like and subscribe. Tell a friend. Keep telling your barber to make it shorter. Do whatever you want. And I will see you in the next one. Bye! Okay, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much does he look like me? Not with this haircut, but I mean before.